Alright, welcome back. This is What If Deku was Shirou Emiya, Part 5. Where we last left off, Archer had just told, Deku that his name was Izuku Emiya. And Tosaka's shocked, and she's like, I should have been able to piece that together. You guys use the exact same magic. And not only that, your facial structure is similar, but and she's just like trying to find the right words, and Archer basically says heroic spirits can be summoned from the past, present, or future. There's no statute of limitation as to what time they can be summoned. And he's like, and Ren's like, but what was the relic used to summon you? And Archer basically tells her it was the necklace. After you saved his life with that necklace, he kept it with him all throughout the rest of his life, all the way up till the day he died. And basically, Archer tells Deku that even though his magical skills are great, he is nowhere near capable of fighting a heroic spirit himself. Not unless he acquires the experience that his future self has. And Deku, he's like, well, how am I going to gain that experience? And Archer just looks and says, by fighting me to the death. And when, Deku hears that, he's like, what? And Archer's like, you heard me right. You're going to fight me to the death. After all, I always planned on killing you anyway. He's like, but the situation's changed. Things are a lot more dire now, so I can't prioritize my own personal business. So training you, and if you just so happen to die along in training, that fits me just fine. And so Deku's like, where are we gonna fight then? Because I'm not fighting you in my house. I already fought one heroic spirit in my house. I'm not fighting another one. And, Archer basically says, don't worry about that. We'll be fighting in my noble phantasm, my reality marble. And Tosaka's like, wait, a reality marble? And Archer's like, yes, and you'll need to supply the mana so I can focus all of mine against him. But you should also hold some back for healing. And she's just like, you are asking way too much of me. He says, would you prefer to get killed in the Grail War? And Tosaka is she's like, fine. And, he tells Deku, pay close attention to what I'm about to say and do. And copy everything. So, Deku does. He pays close attention. Archer raises his left arm and starts the incantation. I am the bone of my sword. Steel is my body and fire is my blood. Unknown to death nor known to life. I have withstood pain to create many weapons, yet those hands will never hold anything. So as I pray, unlimited blade works. And the ground starts to change immediately. The whole area starts to change. And as soon as Deku knows it, he's in a completely different world from what it looks like. And so he's just looking around the air. It doesn't feel any different than the real world, but the sky looks like it's burning. It's scorched. The ground is nothing but sand. And amongst all the sand is nothing but a graveyard of swords stuck deep into the ground. An infinite number of swords that goes on long before the eye can see, just like beyond it. And Archer says, "You better get ready. I'm coming at you with the intent to kill." And Deku, he gets ready. He braces himself. He summons his swords. And Archer blitzes him. And as soon as he gets close enough, he slams down with Bancho and just destroys both of Deku's swords with one sword. And Deku, he's admiring the sword. So, of course, he copies it. And it's for a long time, it's just Bancho versus Bancho. Breaking against, archers. And Deku, he's gone through like 20 of them so far. But each time he makes a new sword set, it gets more durable and durable by the second. But Archer's just not letting Deku just swing around and make progress. No, he's cutting him. And Archer, he's having swords fly right at Deku, just projectile style. And Deku, he's fighting for his life, so he's blocking them. And then he's eventually learning how to do that as well. He copies them and he sends direct copies at them, and they're just hitting each other. There's swords versus swords, an army of swords. Just as second by second, all you hear is the clash of steel hitting steel. And seeing swords shatter or get stuck into the ground below. And at this point, Deku has the matching sword to Bakio. I cannot remember its name right now, but, So he has both of those, and so does Archer. And, they're fighting it out pretty harsh. Like, with every strike they strike against each other's swords, Deku's is getting cracked, but Archer's is slightly getting chipped, and he sees that. And, he's gonna try and get Deku all rattled up now. He's just like, "What's wrong? Is this all you have, hero of justice?" And Deku, he's just like, "What does it matter to you?" He's like, "After all, it seems like you hate the idea of being a hero of justice." And Archer straight up tells him, "Of course I do. That's what got us here. This is what we get when we die. This world, this is our reward. Being forced to kill people countless times all throughout history. Never getting a rest. Never being able to stop fighting. That's the price we pay for following that stupid ideals. And in the end, we don't save anybody. Because all we fought for was that ideal, so all we were able to save were ideals. And while you can fight all you want, struggle, it makes no difference to me, but you will never beat me in a million years." And that's getting Deku riled up, and he's rebuting that, and he's basically saying, What's wrong with having ideals to strive for? What is wrong with that? And Archer, he says, if you want to go around and never hurt anyone, that's fine. Do what you want. But make sure that it's your own desire, not something you took from somebody else. Because if it is a desire of your own free will, all the sins and consequences of your actions, you will be able to accept them. It won't be like a death sentence given to you by someone who's offered you salvation. He's like, your admiration for Kiritsugu, it's blinded you, it's twisted you, and it's leaving you conflicted inside, eating at you. You're trying to be his ideal hero of justice, but you're failing. You're becoming more like Kiritsugu every day, and you're noticing that. And you hate that you're not able to be better than him. Your admiration is what's dooming you. You have a life. You should be able to live it your way without feeling guilty for surviving. And every clash they make, Deku's getting flashbacks to the day where it all started. The hell he's walking through. He sees his younger self walking through there. And he calls out to him. He says, "Hey kid, you know that's hell you're walking into, right?" The kid says nothing and keeps walking forward. And then Deku flashes back to where he's actually at. He's fighting Archer. And Tosaka's looking on and she's like, he fought so hard all throughout his life. And this is all he has to show for it. Everything that he's ever done all throughout his life to help others. And that ends up with him being subjected to just staying here. Forced to fight for all eternity, never getting a break. Emiya sees this, and she's kind of with Archer. She wants Deku to just drop the whole hero of justice act. It's his ideals that's gonna end up getting him stuck like this. And if he knows his future and how it's going to turn out, and if it's going to turn out as badly as what Archer says it is, why not try to change it to something positive, something better? And Rin just answers, because that's not who he is. He'll suffer, he'll fight, he'll do anything for anybody, but he'll never save himself. From the first moment I saw him stabbing Kirei through the leg to get information out of him, it wasn't for himself. He could have asked that priest anything. But what did he do? He asked him about what's going on so he could stop it and save the people. He's doing everything selflessly, but at the same time, he's condemning himself to fight a war that has nothing to do with him. He's pushing himself far beyond the breaking point, nearly risking his life every day for some random people that never even know he's doing it. He goes to that school and is probably pretty dull there, probably doesn't have any friends. But he comes home every night, trains, pours his heart, soul, and all of his blood and tears into training himself to be better, all for the sake of someone who saved him once. And she says it's a pretty sad life. No matter how you look at it, saved by someone, but only to be trapped by their ideals. Honestly, how sad can you be, Emiya? And you know, Deku, he's still not giving up, and he's like, sure, it may have started as admiration at first, but what's so wrong with that? What's wrong with being able to admire somebody and want to strive to be like them, be better than them? Where's the harm in that? And Archer basically tells him, what's the harm in that? I've killed so many people to try to reach my ideals. I've killed so many people. I've killed and I've killed and I've killed. I've killed so much I've stopped caring. And sure, I may have saved 1,000 times what I've killed. But I can't forget that I just stopped caring about the innocent people along the way. If I could kill one innocent person to save 100, I'd do it. If I could kill 50 of them, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Slaughter people who didn't even deserve it nor knew it was coming. All to save twice that amount. And he says if that's not what's wrong, and if you don't see that as being disastrous, that will lead you to doing that, following your ideals, then there is something wrong with you. Are you so blinded by that man's and your admiration for him that you would condemn innocents, countless of them, to death to save random strangers, people you didn't even know, the majority, even if they weren't innocent, even if they were guilty and deserved death? Would you still save the majority and sacrifice the minority, regardless of their innocence or guilt? And Deku, he's actually stunned by that. He's stunned by what his future self is telling him he's going to end up doing. His hands are trembling. He takes a deep breath and he tells him, I'll follow my ideals through. That's the only path I have. But I will not end up like you. He's like, you've forgotten the most important part. Our hands might get dirty. We might plunge ourselves so far into the filth of the world, we would throw ourselves to hell. But it's all for the sake of the world. Being able to bring a day where no one's fighting anymore, where everyone's getting along, where there's no more trouble, no crime, no sorrow, only happiness. That is what we strive for. No matter how long we have to fight or where we fight it at. What we do, we don't get to decide that we want a place in the sun now, or that this life may not have ended up the way we wanted it to, but we don't get to decide that we're done. We made a promise to be a hero of justice, and just because your hands have gotten dirty to the point you don't recognize them, you think it's time to throw in the towel. I won't be like you. I will never give up on my ideals. And Archer is pissed at this point, and he's not holding back. And he says, then you can die here with your ideals. The world would be a much better place without you in it. And he goes to strike down Deku. And just as he does, Deku stabs him straight into the stomach, saying that it's his win. And Archer stumbles back a bit. And then, the reality marble collapses. Because, Rin ran out of magic. Because even in, the canon, Rin never really had the magic power to be able to sustain that for very long at all. It's a wonder it lasted as long as it did, Archer says. Although, he's now on the ground bleeding out of his stomach. And Deku's like, as soon as you're recovered, I want to hear the whole story. I want to hear about my future. What I do, and what ends up killing me. And Archer says, very well, as he's healing himself off of his own magic. And so he tells Deku basically to pursue his ideal. He joined up as a freelance freedom fighter. And he was fighting in a war. And that's when it happened. The war came to an end, and he was framed as the mastermind. And he was set to be executed by hanging. And he complied. He didn't regret a thing. He marched straight forward to his death without a single complaint or a care in the world. He smiled even as they put the rope around his neck and dropped off the edge, strangled to death by a rope. Then the next thing he knows, he's working as a counterforce guardian. He's like, in life, I allied myself with the deterrent force. But in death, I became the deterrent force. That is what happens. And Deku, he's taken aback by that, knowing that his death is going to come at the cost of him being hung. And that he'll do that gladly. And he asks him, wait a minute, what about being a pro hero? Doesn't that work out? And, Archer, he pauses for a minute. And he's basically tells Deku, look, as much as I want to say that it doesn't, it does work out for me, but I still feel like I couldn't save as many people, so I left, being a hero behind. However, things and events have changed. For starters, I never met myself in my timeline. And we didn't have to deal with these whole cards and people being brought back using dolls. I never had to deal with that. So honestly, I can't say with 100% certainty that you'll become me. It's like, you may have my skills, but your future, well, that's another point entirely. And so Deku, he notices that. So, and Ilya, she's over there just being herself. She's like, oh, so there's still hope that he won't be hung. And Archer's like, vaguely, yes, there is a possibility that outcome won't happen. And Ilya's happy to hear that. as much as she wanted to kill, Deku, she is glad that he doesn't die that way. After all, they've spent many months now, like, bonding together, and she is thinking of him as actual family. She really couldn't imagine her life without her brother at this point. So those two have a very close, family bond now. So, of course, Ilya is not really out to kill Deku anymore. And, Deku can sense that a bit. And he's happy about that. And he is glad that he does have family again, even though it is Ilya. And she doesn't really look like a big sister. But at the same time, he's really not one to complain, because the loneliness he's been feeling all that time, it's now washed away. Like, he has a family again with Ilya. And as much as he doesn't want to admit it to himself, he is, like, steadily just growing feelings for Tosaka. And he tells her, like, he's glad that she's here. He really couldn't imagine a day without her anymore. And Tosaka, being herself, she's like, what are you saying? And Deku he comes out with it. He's like, well, I like you. And, I'd be sad if anything happened to you. And Tosaka, she's just like, well, don't think I feel the same way. I don't care what happens to you. But really, she does. She likes him just as much. And, Rin, she's really just trying to process the whole fact that Archer is Deku. She is still in disbelief of that. But really, she's just mad that she didn't notice it sooner. And so, I'm going to say for the rest of the month, Deku and Archer, they do train a bit more to help get the edge up. But they also go out and do recon. They try and see where the other masters are and what servants they have on the board. And if they have any of those cards. And, that's over with. And, it's time that they go back to school. So Deku, he goes back to school and people notice there's something different about him. And of course, they try to ask, and Ida, he's actually the one that's running up there. He's like, oh, just leave the guy alone, leave the guy alone. And, Deku's basically like saying, thanks, man. Like, his classmates do get annoying. He's like, well, yeah, but at the same time, they are worried about you. And, he's like, as am I, so what's up? He's like, there's a different air about you now. And Deku, he's just like, oh, I just did some training. That's all. Nothing too serious. And Ida, he's like, okay. And he's like, well, I can see that. You do have a bit more muscle on you than last time. And Deku's like, yeah, went through a lot of pain. But I increased my speed, my strength, my stamina, and my durability. After the deal with those villains, it pretty much showed me that we can't just take it easy just because we made it in. We might be put in situations where we do have to fight villains. And either he agrees, and he told Deku that he was out training with his brother as well. And, they make it to class almost. Because they do see this huge crowd of people just all around their classroom. And, there's one guy in particular, and he's just like, oh, look, it's the 1A students. And, Deku, he steps up and he's like, yeah, and who are you? He's like, and basically, it's Shinzo, and Shinzo says, oh, how rude. My name is Shinzo. And Deku's like, And Shinzo asks Deku, what's your quirk? Deku basically says, I'm quirkless. And Shinzo, he's kind of shook. He's like, what? Deku's like, yeah, I'm quirkless. And Deku's like asking, so what class are you in? Shinzo basically says that he's in the support course. And Deku's just like, huh. And he's like, oh, well, how does it feel that a quirkless student outdid you in the entrance exams and put you so far down in the support course? Must hurt your pride a little bit. Especially seeing as how I defeated some of the villains all by myself. He's like, and he's really getting underneath Shinzo's skin. And Shinzo's about to use his quirk on him. Deku's just like, I just don't have the time to waste on you. And he walks by. And he is just like, that was a bit cold even for you. And Deku's like, well, he kept talking down on us as a class, so I'm not really going to be having that. And of course, before he can enter the room, Monoma comes in to the picture. And Monoma's going off like saying, who do you think you are? Just because you're quirkless doesn't make you some hotshot here. He's just like, oh, but of course you're class 1A. You want to just put people down, don't you? And Deku's just like, dude, are you fucking retarded? And Mono's like, what? And Deku's like, dude, I only said that to him because he was trying to put our class down, and here you are trying to do the same thing. The fuck is wrong with you? And, Deku basically tells him, just because I'm quirkless doesn't mean I won't fuck your shit up. And he's just like, what? And, Deku, he's kind of adopting Archer's personality now. So he is trying to be more cold-hearted and callous towards people. And, he just pushes him aside, and him and Nita walk in the room. And, Ida's kind of filling out the Issei role to, like, Ida is what Issei is to Shirou, but Ida's that to Deku. Basically, he's only one real friend. And, Deku starts telling him about the add-ons he's doing to his heroic attire and what he's taken away from it. And, Ida's like, well, it definitely helped you stand out more and make your attire more unique. And basically, what Deku's new hero suit's gonna look like is the picture on the screen. He's gonna have the hood, one arm fully unsleeved, but, the black slide handguard all the way up on his forearm. And, the red covering on the pants. And, he didn't realize Deku's wearing a necklace. And, he's like, oh, you're actually wearing a necklace. And, Deku, he says, oh, yeah, it's important to me. So, he just tucks it up under there so nobody else sees it and tries to take it or ask him about it. Like, he only lets Ida ask about it because he's cool with Ida. And, as Awa comes in, he tries to calm everybody down. He's like, okay, so about the situation with the villains. We had to take a month off to clean up the PR and add security and do some other stuff. Basically, we were gearing up for the sports festival, which is still going to happen. So, after we get through our exams this week, you guys will have the rest of the month to train for the sports festival. We're doing this to show that we won't be deterred by villains and that we are stronger than ever. And, Deku, he's more curious as to how is he teaching any type of class in his condition. And he's basically saying, well, my leg is fully healed thanks to Recovery Girl, but my arms and my eyes, they're going to take a bit while longer, but they should heal up just fine. After a few more trips, and, Deku's just like, okay. So he's just not going to question things because he still doesn't understand the whole quirk system all too well after being raised by mages his whole life. So quirks are still foreign to him. And Ida's picking up on that slowly and surely, but he's really just confused as to, even though Deku's quirkless, he should know about quirks. But then he remembers that he says he was, pretty much raised overseas. So he's just like, maybe they don't talk about quirks as much over there. He doesn't really know. He's never been. But so all throughout the week, they're just taking exams. Deku's getting closer with Rin and, with Ilya. Those three are actually spending a lot of time together. And Uraraka notices that, every day Deku has these two women waiting for him and they always walk home together. So she asks him about that and Deku's like, oh, that's my sister Ilya. And Ida says, oh yes, the short one with the white hair, that's his big sister. And Uraraka, she's shook. She's just like, big sister? And, he's just like, yeah, she takes after her mother. I just kind of met her a few months ago. So we've been really bonding. And she's like, well, who's the other one? And all Deku will say is that, she's just someone important to him. And Uraraka's just, she's stunned by that. And she's like, are you dating her? And Deku won't say anything to confirm that, but he's not denying it either. So he basically just tells her, she's the woman I have feelings for. That's all. And it's none of your business who I walk home with or what I do. So butt out. And he walks off. And he sees Rin's there by herself today without Ilya. And Deku's a bit confused by that, so he walks over to Rin and asks her, hey, well, where's Ilya? And she's like, oh, Ilya's staying at home. She says she wanted to try something different today. And Deku, he asks her, oh, Lord, I hope she doesn't burn down the house. And Ren just chuckles. She's like, oh, even if that happens, we can simply just go to my house. And, Deku, he's just like, I've never even seen your house. And he's like, do you still go by your house? And Tosaka, she's talking to him. She's like, oh, yes, I'm about to be heading back home to my house today. She's like, I have to go pick up a few things, but I'll be back later tonight. And Deku's like, oh, okay. And she asks him how his classes are going. He's like, oh, it's all right. He tells her, we haven't encountered any of the servants for a month now, so just be careful. Things seem to be a bit too quiet for his liking. And Tosaka's like, don't worry, I'll have Archer with me the entire time. And Deku, he feels better about that. And they get home, they eat, Tosaka leaves, and, that's where I'm going to leave it off for now, anyway. So, if you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here, and leave a comment down below if you have a suggestion or any feedback. Greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one.